If you've ever felt something is a bit off in a friendship, especially when your lives start to change, you are not imagining that. This happens a lot in friendships over time, and it doesn't mean anybody did anything wrong, but it does mean that something feels different. Today, we're going to look at what really happens in friendships when your lives change and why a friendship can start to feel off even when nobody did anything wrong, so you can better understand what you're feeling instead of questioning the friendship right away. Because sometimes it's not about losing the friendship, it's just about not recognizing it anymore. One of the things we're going to talk about is pretty easy to miss because most people don't notice it until they already have the feeling that something is definitely off in their friendship, even though they cannot pinpoint something that went wrong to cause that feeling. One of the first things that you notice is you just have a feeling that something is off. It's just an awareness. You have an awareness in yourself, or maybe your friend has that same awareness that something just feels off, but you just can't pinpoint what it is. It not a specific event, not a specific statement or an action, but something just doesn't feel the same in your friendship. And you start becoming aware of that, but you just can't put your finger on it. And once you start feeling that, you might start feeling a little uncomfortable because for the reason that you can't put your finger on it, it's an uncertainty. So you know something feels off, you're uncertain what it was, and you really want to know what that thing is, and that's making you a little bit of uncomfortable because you cannot identify that feeling that you're having that something is off. This is the point after your awareness point of, okay, I'm aware, I have this feeling that something is off, but I can't pinpoint it, I can't put my finger on it. And this is the one that's really hard to miss because a lot of times it is just our lives moving in different directions. But in our heads, we know that. We know that people's lives and our friends' lives are going to move in different directions, but a lot of times I think the human mind goes to, well, no, it's got to be something bigger than that, right? We just think, yeah, we know lives are going to change, but it must be something bigger that's making me feel this way. But oftentimes it's not. Oftentimes it's going to be that your life and your friend's life are maybe moving in different directions at this time. And sometimes it's so gradual that you really don't notice it. I can give one example here. My best friend and I, 3+ decades, met in Taekwondo. She was engaged. I had a significant other. But at that time in our lives, we were there 3 or 4 nights a week. We were spending time, we had a lot of overlap in our lives with Taekwondo. We went out as a group with other people from the Taekwondo school. Her and I were forming our friendship during that time and then, outside of the Taekwondo school. So there was a lot of overlap in our lives at that time. At that time, we had the same priorities. And then eventually that started to shift. She got married, right? So that became obviously a priority. And then she had children. That became a priority. And that's when her life started to travel down a different direction, as did mine. After a while, I changed from Taekwondo to another physical activity. So that overlap that was in our lives was not there anymore. And we both felt it. There was definitely a bit of a shift or a feeling of being off in our friendship during that time. We just had less natural overlap. And sometimes that can be the root of it, but a lot of times it's not obvious at first. And then you start noticing maybe the impact of that feeling that you're having on your friendship. Feels a little bit different, feels a little bit off. Maybe you've recognized now that your lives are going in different directions, but what does it feel like? What kind of impact is that having on your friendship when you realize that these things are happening? You start to notice it in small ways, right? Maybe conversations feel a little bit different. You don't talk as often as you used to. You don't connect as deeply as you used to. And you have less in common at this point because maybe your lives are definitely in different directions, right? Maybe it's one is career, one is family, one is travel, one is education, all of these different things, directions that people's lives can take. And so your connections don't feel deep as they used to. And sometimes it's even the way you relate to each other also changes. And what used to feel easy now doesn't feel as easy as it used to. And then you start thinking, is there something larger wrong in the friendship? And sometimes, whereas the friendship used to feel almost effortless or conversations used to feel effortless, you feel like you have to put more thought into them. You might even think to yourself, what do I say next? Questioning yourself on what to say next when that used to just be something that flowed so naturally. And now you're questioning, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. And you just feel like your conversations or your time together takes more effort than it used to. Maybe they're becoming more surface level conversations. These feelings do not always mean that a friendship is going to end. Sometimes it just means the friendship is changing and you are in that in between place trying to understand what it is now compared to what it used to be. And that's okay because a lot of times that is where friendships grow. Friendships grow stronger, friendships grow deeper. A lot of times these are transition phases, right? Especially if your lives are taking completely different directions. This doesn't mean that this friendship is going to end. It does mean it's in some type of transition phase. And if the friendship ends because of it, then that's entirely possible, but you still have that friendship and that time and those memories for what they were. But just because something feels off, that doesn't mean that you are not going to ride those transitions out with your friend because you are friends and you still care about each other. And even though your lives are taking different directions, it doesn't mean that the friendship has to come to an end. It means you're growing and you're growing together. It can also mean that you are going to remain friends, but there might be a little bit more distance in that friendship. It might not remain as strong as it was previously, but that's okay because you can still have that friend and you can still enjoy these times together and sharing the stories together. And again, if they move to a different level of a friend, that's okay too. In the end, friendships don't always change all at once. They just start to feel a little bit off as people's lives take different paths. Have you ever had a friendship where you just thought something felt a little bit off to you and you couldn't put your finger on it? I would love to see what other things might cause that feeling. Obviously, there are many. I think life changes being one of the biggest ones as people's lives move in different directions. But if you have any stories to share, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I would love to hear them. And if this has made you question whether a friendship is starting to drift, we actually talked about this in our video titled When a Friendship Starts Drifting, Should You Fight for It or Let It Go? Feel free to check that out. And thank you very much. Peace.